I'd like to call to order the Cuyahoga County Council regular meeting of October the 11th, 2011. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Brady?
Present.
Mr. Germana?
Here.
Mr. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Schron?
Here.
Ms. Conwell? Here. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Ms. Simon? Here. Mr. Greenspan?
Here.
Ms. Conley? Here. There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for our staff. We had a very nice meet and greet with Cleveland City Council here in Chambers just prior to this meeting. And it was good to see all of Cleveland City Council members here. All right, we'd all like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For our silent meditation, we'd like to call on everyone to take a moment of silence to think of their own personal concerns in this very serious economic times. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Is there any public comment related to the agenda? Has anyone signed in?
Madam Clerk, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. As we were cleaning up, we had just put out the signature sheet, so want to give us just a minute?
Just for the public, we have two areas. We have, if there's public comment related to the agenda, we take prior to the meeting, and anything unrelated to the agenda, we take at the conclusion of the meeting.
Okay. Mr. McCartney would like to speak, but it's unrelated to the agenda.
Okay,
so
Mr.
we'll take
McCartney,
him
we'll be
later.
taking you at the end of the agenda. All right, the minutes of the meeting of September 27th are in your packet. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Greenspan and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Is there any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The minutes are adopted. We do have a motion for Mr. Miller.
Madam President, I would like to move under Rule 6B that we amend the agenda to add an additional item, which would be resolution number 2011-0295, and this would be in item number 12 for first reading, introduction, and referral to committee. Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. And that will be added as item 12E. Is Mr. Fitzgerald here, or I thought I'd seen him?
And then a motion to adopt.
Madam President and members of council, I don't believe he's here yet, but I assume that he's on his way.
We'll just go ahead with our agenda and take him when he comes in. All right. Item 8, consideration of a motion of council for first reading and referral to committee.
Motion number 2011-0049, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of individuals to serve on the Cuyahoga Regional HIV Health Services Planning Council and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective for the nominees as printed on the agenda, item 8A, 1 through 6.
All right, this is the second phase of appointments to this council, and we refer to the Human Resources Committee. Item 9, committee report and consideration of motions of council for second reading and adoption under suspension of the rules. Ms. Simon, of the under 9D.
Madam President, I move we suspend the rules.
Second.
I moved by Ms. Simon and seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The rules are suspended. Item 0046.
Motion number 2011-0046, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of individuals to serve on the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective for the nominees as printed on the agenda, items 9A, 1, and 2.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schrein and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Is there any discussion? Mr. Honorable Charles Smith is the mayor of the village of Woodmere, is a former player for the Florida Marlins. And I'm not sure about Mr. Sanchez? He's a lawyer, okay. Also, any other discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. And item 0047.
Motion 2011-0047, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of individuals to serve on the Cuyahoga Regional HIV Health Services Planning Council and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective for the nominees as printed on the agenda, items 9B, 1 through 29.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schrein and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Is there any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. All right, let's go back to item 7 with the county executive, who is now with us.
Good evening, Madam President, members of council. By the budgetary ordinance that was passed by this body some time ago, we're required in the first meeting in October to present some budgetary information. I would, as I've told some of you individually, we're going to be supplementing this and continuing to provide more detail because there are a number of still undefined variables because we're at a period financially in the county of kind of maximum uncertainty with certain trends. But I'm going to go through an overall short and succinct presentation of where we think we're going to stand in general terms in the next 2 years. First of all, I think it's important to just talk about some of the underlying principles that are reflected in this budget, and one of those or themes or trends that we must take into account. One of those is to quantify for you and for the public the effect of negative budgetary trends. And the first one that I would just point out is what we're looking at approximately, at least as far as we know, in the next 2 years when it comes to cuts in state funds. I'm not sure what order you got these, but I'm referring to an exhibit that you've received that says final state fiscal year 2012 to 2013 budget, House Bill 153, summary of revenue loss by source. And as this shows, there are four major categories where, in addition to declining tax revenues in some categories, which I'll mention in a moment, we are struggling with pretty consistent cuts from the state. So beginning with the local government fund, that may be a deceptively small number at first, because at first it just says 2.8 million, but that's just because that was for the first half of this year. So after the budget was cut, it was cut at a 25% level for this calendar year, but we didn't realize that until the budget had been cut. So we only actually realized 2.8 million of it. By the time you get kind of the full year, at least the second half of the year, and then combined with additional cuts for 2012, it ends up being 12.6 million for fiscal year, our calendar year 2012, and then eventually 17.4 million. It will have been realized in its entirety in 2013. The CAT reimbursement, commercial activities tax reimbursement changes also end up escalating. So you go from because it's on a graduated schedule. So it goes from 8 million to 8.4 million to 11.1 million. The SB3 utility reimbursement, which again is a formula change, it goes from 1.3 to 2.3, and then again 2.3. The Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services revenue cuts go from 4.4 million that we actually realized in calendar year 2011 to 8.9, and then another 8.9 as far as we know in calendar year 2013. All of this adds up to almost $40 million in cuts in state assistance now, or reimbursements, $39.7 million total. Now, other trends that kind of create the world that we're living in here have to do with declining revenues on our tax revenue side. Sales tax revenue, what we are estimating in this budget is that we're expecting it to grow at an average rate of about 3% in 2012 and 2013. Property tax collections, we are budgeting, are assumed that they will be flat, but eventually there will be a 5% drop in property valuations after our assessment process is complete. This ends up being, in total, an expected revenue loss of approximately $2 million annually in the general fund and over $10 million in the Health and Human Services funds. The other thing that we have sought to do in this budgetary presentation to you is, again, when you talk about a 1.2, and this is about a $2.4 billion budget for a 2-year period of time, it's important, I think, for us to define the parts of the budget that we control and the parts of the budget that we do not control, because there are enormous swaths of the budget that we do not actually control. So with your permission or your tolerance, I just want to go into quickly some of the general items as we have defined them in the next 2 years in terms of what we control and what we do not control. Now, first of all, for the $1.2 billion of spending in 2012, in general, it is defined as follows, that Health and Human Services funding represents approximately $571.7 million, which is about 44.9% of our funding. That includes the funding that we give to the Metro system, which is about $36.1 million, and what we give to the funding that we provide for the Adams Board, which is $33.6 million. The remaining $489 million for HHS covers everything from Children and Family Services, Senior and Adult Services, Employment and Family Services, and a myriad of other social service programs. The next largest expenditure that we have is really for what I would call just general justice and safety operations. And then additional categories include the Fiscal Office, the Department of Public Works, and the Board of Elections, which is actually going to see, because of the presidential election, we are required to spend additional money for the conducting of the presidential election in 2012. There are also a number of categories where we have what I would call mandatory payments that we do not control. So, for instance, you are going to see in this budget that debt service on the bonds that we have already floated totals approximately, for 2012, totals approximately $78.5 million. Now, $40 million of that roughly goes to support or finance the Medical Mart and other economic development projects. The county has also funded other capital projects through the years through the issuance of bonds, and in 2012, the total amount of debt payments that are required, and again, these are not discretionary, that is not discretionary spending, it is required. The total amount of debt payments will be approximately $37.9 $8 million. We have approximately, there's a lot of talk about how we do not control federal and state pass-through funds, and that is true, and that totals a large number of about $347 million that's on an annual basis. So just for 2012, it's approximately $347,400,000. About $175 million of that is for health and human services programs. Now, what are some other approaches that we used in putting together this budget? Well, there are some other strategies that we used that I wanted to reference for you. One is that we have tried to implement, as you know, spending discipline as much as we possibly could in 2011, and that will continue in 2012, although, as you've probably heard me say on a number of occasions, I am always loath to say exactly how much smaller government will get, because our reductions have been realized as a result of analysis, not as a result of formula. So I haven't set a specific number. We have a reference number for anticipated reductions, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to be in excess of that. But I want to talk a little bit about what the reductions have been on the spending side in 2011, and we hopefully will be able to continue to do that. The total number of positions that have been eliminated since January 1 in 2011 is about 294 positions. The net reduction for all executive agencies is approximately a 6% decrease. If you look at the other spending reductions, if you look at the 2012 budget compared to the 2011 budget on the HHS level, it's about a $7.7 million drop in planned HHS levy expenditures. There are several other areas where we are, I think, being more fiscally responsible, but it is difficult to quantify them. So, for instance, we do believe that there are, and there have already been this year, savings in the way that we procure and contract for services, but it is difficult to budget for that. So we know that we have saved in excess of $1 million this year in terms of how we contract with IT, as you know, and we believe that those savings will continue, but that isn't a line item that we can necessarily quantify in a budget document. We also have projected savings when it comes to healthcare. And as you know, because the council just passed the new healthcare offerings that we'll be offering to employees, we estimate that there will be approximately $2.5 million saved just in 2012 for non-union employees. Now, we are also in the process of trying to extend that same cost-cutting health insurance program via our union negotiations, which would roughly double those savings on an annual basis. So if we could actually extend that plan to all county employees that are under the control of the executive's office, we're talking about reductions in the area of around $5 million just with healthcare. I just want to say a word about what some of the reductions we think that are going to come about because of departmental consolidations. We are very close now to officially consolidating the workforces of the Recorder, Treasurer, Auditor's Office, the divisions of the Office of Budget Management, Office of Procurement and Diversity, and the Clerk of Courts in the Title Division. All of these reductions, we believe, are going to result in about a $4.5 million savings for the 2012 budget, less than the 2010 numbers. There are other, I won't go through all of them, but we have a number of other consolidations, which again, they are difficult to completely quantify their savings for 2012 and 2013, but intuitively, we believe that they will save money. So that goes, I think, to to the good in terms of how when we're trying to estimate what our expenditures are going to be. Some of those consolidations you heard about actually from Director Werner earlier today, so I'm not going to go through those. The consolidations that we're doing in the Public Works Department, which has now centralized its operation into 3 separate divisions. The building consolidation, which we are due to receive a report on within about 45 days or so from our consultant in that matter. We believe there's also going to be significant savings there through both rental payments, maintenance, and utilities that the county ends up paying out. We already know that we can already budget, as a matter of fact, a decrease of approximately 8% in operating budgets just with the reductions that we've made so far with what used to be called central services. I want to talk a little bit, if I could, about, and oh, by the way, in terms of the staffing trends, I want to go in a little bit more into that, and I think you have a graphical representation of this. This shows the county staffing trends from 2010 until 2014. This is just for those offices that we actually have administrative control over, so it doesn't include developmental disabilities or the courts or areas where we don't have direct control over whether they hire or fire or what their employee levels are. As this graph shows you, we were at approximately 5,092 employees as of December 31st in 2010. Through the reductions that we've been implementing all year, either through layoff, termination, resignation, or retirement, we are currently estimating that this is a very conservative estimate, by the way. Actually, our current number right now is approximately 4,794. That number is going to change shortly because we have additional consolidations in the fiscal office, especially after the classification study is completed. So that number is not going to be actually the year-end number. It's going to be lower than that. I directed my staff to just basically set a target of 100 additional personnel reductions and keep that flat for 2012, 2013, and then we have a projection for 2014. That's just by basically saying if we reduced our original numbers by an additional 2% or so, we may be able to exceed that. But I didn't want to show that we were going to be keeping the same number of employees, and so that's just that's an approximation that is in here. Again, you're dealing with a variable that's based on an analysis and our ongoing efforts to try to reduce staff. So it's impossible, I think, to be more specific, but at least there's some level that will continue to decrease in terms of total number of employees in executive-controlled agencies. I want to say a couple more categories before I stop. One is there are things that this budget does, I think, that really move us along an overall strategy for fiscal strength. First of all, and I salute the council for doing this, we're adopting a 2-year budget strategy, which is a significant improvement over a year-to-year system, and it is going to allow for more rational planning and long-term planning and strategy. Secondly, this budget, and I'll go into some details about the specific dollar items in a moment, is I think really going to reach all of the goals that we originally set out, which is, first of all, that government is going to be smaller and more efficient, that we are going to be maintaining an appropriate level of fiscal reserve because we're going to have a general fund surplus of over 25%, which is over the recommended amounts of anywhere between 20 and 25% that's generally recommended for municipal entities. And third, we are going to be making progress on our initiatives that we set forth earlier this year. So let me talk about some of the specific numbers when it comes to 2012 and 2013 budgetary line items. First of all, we are showing for 2012 a revenue estimate in the general fund, general operating fund, of approximately $354 million. And we're showing revenues on the Health and Human Services side of approximately $222 million for a combined general fund spending of $576, $300,000 and $300,000. The expenditures in all of these categories are slightly less. So we have 354.01 million in expenditures on the general operating fund. Then we have 222.008, which is exactly what we had estimated in terms of revenue, and 576.1 for total expenditures, for a total surplus of really just $200,000. Now, that is just this year's addition to the surplus. We already had a surplus number that we had built in that was in excess of what municipal finance experts would tell you that the county needed to keep. So as an entity, we were not in a position of being underfunded in terms of our surplus. We were at actually an above recommended amount for surplus. So there wasn't a need to build up a surplus, which was a situation I faced when I was mayor of my city. We are in a position of trying to manage our resources, have a balanced budget, which this is for 2012, and then still figure out a way to fund the initiatives that the county government didn't used to do. So what do we end up with then? Well, it means that for the ending balance, we have $105 million ending balance just in the general fund of the operating part of the budget. We have a $43 million surplus with the levy funds for a combined general fund surplus of $148.73 million. That is, by the way, if you do the percentages, it's a 29.8% amount in reserve for the operating fund, and a 19.4% just for the human services levy, for a 25.8% operating surplus. Now, let's talk about 2013. 2013, we have a revenue estimate that we will be providing to you of $349.9 million. Again, slightly less, as you may notice, that we're estimating that we'll be spending less money in the general fund because of personnel reductions and other efficiencies, but we'll be spending about $5 million less in the general fund than we were in 2012. So again, our total expenditures are going down and not up. For the Health and Human Services levy, we're showing about $211 million in revenues, and also in expenditures, and we're matching that precisely. Again, as you can see, you're losing $11 million just in the yield of what the levy is from 2012 until 2013. The combined amount is again very similar to the 2012 numbers, but smaller. 561 million total for the revenue estimate. 560 million so it's about $1 million, a little bit more than $1 million surplus that we are estimating. That's in addition to the again, this is we're not tapping into the previous year's budget surplus. So it's about $1 million. It's about $1 million surplus in that category. Again, if you look at the balance to expenditure numbers, we end up with a combined general fund surplus of about 25.5% in surplus. So where does this leave us in terms of the amounts that we have retained for various initiatives? Well, we are these numbers that you're being provided reflect about a $16 million reserve amount. We actually have a number of reserve amounts that we'll go into in more detail next week, but we have started to try to take portions of our budget and reserve them for certain purposes. We've taken the $16 million that we have basically saved through personnel reductions because we're just so far this year, we're at about $17 million in personnel reductions this year. And we've taken that $16 million and reserved it for the purposes of the initiatives that we've talked about. Some of those numbers are already, some of them are already baked into the existing budget. They don't anticipate necessarily that all of those funds would be spent by this council. But for instance, and we already have about $1 million additional that we have budgeted for Invest in Children, and that is already reflected in your budget numbers. We have about $1 million on a yearly basis that we already have budgeted in these numbers for the sheriff's office, for the community policing initiative, which will be starting actually in a few weeks. There's approximately $8 million that's reserved for the Economic Development Fund. It doesn't mean that all $8 million, by the way, will be expended at once, because that $8 million is basically there to be a reserve fund. Again, we're using this concept of having certain funds in reserve for when we need to spend them. So it wouldn't make sense for us to expend all $8 million and get $100 million in loan product and then try to find projects that fit that $100 million. All the while, you would be paying the interest on the bonds. So we have actually we have the money reserved, but it will only be spent in increments of $2 or $3 million at a time as we start to actually fully fund the program. But as soon as we have $100 million available of qualifying projects, we already have the amount that's reserved. That leaves us with approximately $6 million. After you take the $1 million out for Invest in Children, the $1 million for law enforcement, and the $8 million for the Economic Development Fund, it leaves about $6 million that we're leaving in this general mandate that the council has to establish a scholarship or a post-secondary education or training program. It doesn't mean that money has to be spent all at once or immediately or necessarily ever, but we wanted to make sure that we at least had that money reserved so that as the council, in an amount that I think is pretty appropriate. I mean, that would be by far the most ambitious investment that certainly the county's ever done, but even more than the city of Cleveland has ever delegated for that type of a function. But I think you probably would agree with me that we're not ready to spend that money, and the council hasn't decided exactly how it wants to be spent. We're working with you on that whole prospect, and we've been working with the city of Cleveland and the education compact that I know a couple of you attended, Council President Connolly, I think, and others attended last week. So, but we thought it was important to at least reserve that amount of money. If the council feels like it is ready to make disbursements, the revenue will be there. Now, what does this mean in terms of tax revenue in general? Well, we have a human services levy coming up or we're scheduled to have it come up in March, and this budget assumes that we will have the same levy at the same amount. We're not asking for an increase in the levy, even with all the state cuts, because there is money, we think, in the county budget overall, where when the county was flush with cash, so to speak, there had been amounts reserved, including within the HHS levy portion of the budget, that we think that we can survive. It doesn't mean that there won't be an effect of state cuts. There will be, but this budget assumes that we will live within that revenue. And I think at this point in time, with what our surplus is and what we're facing economically right now, it wasn't an appropriate time to go back to the taxpayers and ask for additional taxes, but it is appropriate to ask for just a renewal of what our current tax levy is, and that's what this budget assumes. Now, that would be we're preparing the legislation for council on that, and you will be seeing that shortly, and it will be just a renewal of the exact same millage that we had that we have currently. That's what we'll be proposing. So that in sum, I'm sorry to be wordy about it, but that in sum is what we're looking at presenting you. We know that it's going to be a long and exhaustive process, as it should be. We will be giving you final and complete numbers for every single department, and I think overall you'll have a good sense of where we're heading with everything. It doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to go back and make changes. It doesn't mean we don't that we're defining how much we'll shrink just by setting a general goal. Because again, we're trying to have a relentless process to examine our own operations. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't be opportunities for the council, if it saw fit, to increase spending in certain areas. So overall, we're in a pretty strong financial position that we think is going to fulfill people's expectations of this new government, and also we think make for a very strong case actually to have an improved bond rating when it's reviewed in 2012. That completes my presentation.
I think we're going to have a response from Mr. Miller, but I just wanted to inquire, the plain dealer reported about the loss of revenue that the city will incur because of the possible NBA lockout, and I just want to know, do you have any information about how that would adversely affect the county?
Yeah, and it is. I'm going to if Wade could maybe if Wade could come up and talk about the specifics of what it is. It is I read the same article, and it is going to have an impact on us. And Wade can go into a little bit details. There's one other thing that before you answer that question, Wade, there's one other thing that because I meant to mention that. There's one other thing that I also neglected to mention, which I think is going to be a positive budgetary factor, but it doesn't make sense to include it in actual numbers because it is somewhat speculative, and that is the efforts that we're making and with Fiscal Officer Steen's leadership to collect unpaid taxes, and Council President Connolly and I sit on that task force, which was convened for the first time last week. We can't be specific about how effective we think it's going to be, but I do believe that that's going to result in an improvement. Now, we have over $500 million in outstanding, what's the exact number, Wade, approximately, in outstanding property taxes?
The total number is over $400 million.
Yeah, I thought it was closer to 500, but maybe I'm including some of the court costs in it. So we're at between $400 and $500 million for that. Now, the county doesn't, all of that improvement that we might have in that area doesn't necessarily redound to the county's benefit, because schools and cities and libraries are the primary beneficiaries for for property taxes, and we're hoping to provide them some needed relief since they've been suffering also through all of these state cuts. But those are some things that they're difficult to define exactly, but we hope that's the kind of thing where we're going to overperform in terms of our revenue. Wade, if you could just mention the way that if the NBA season is shortened or canceled, how it could affect the county.
Absolutely, Mr. Executive, Madam President, members of council, we do secure the debt down on the basketball arena in the gateway, and that is supported by ticket revenues. A conservative estimate that we're using in OBM is for each month that there's a lockout, and we hope there's not a lockout, but I guess we've lost 2 weeks already. It's approximately $1 million to $1.1 million that we're going to lose. So Commissioner Stern cost us about $500,000 by canceling the first 2 weeks of the season. And so what we've done is we've set aside, reserved, the county executive was talking about how we're reserving fund balance. We've increased our reserve, sensing that we may lose part of this NBA season, and also that ticket sales may be down, given the change in the makeup of the team. So it will cost us some money. We've accounted for that, and we'll keep monitoring the situation. If it looks like the season's a total lockout, we'll have to increase our reserve because the county is responsible for the debt on their arena.
All right, thank you, Mr. Steen. Mr. Miller, did you want to respond briefly?
Madam President, to my colleagues and to the executive, we We thank you very much for presenting the budget information. It starts the process for considering the county's first biennial budget. And we will begin the budget hearings on this coming Monday, the 17th. And we're expecting to complete the budget on December the 13th. We're going to have a long and very open process, and every meeting is going to be open to the public, and there are going to be 2 hearings, one scheduled on November 7th, shortly after the departmental hearings, or rather on December 9th, shortly after the departmental hearings are concluded, and another on November 17th that are primarily designed for any public comment to be presented about the budget. The one thing we would ask is if you could complete work and get the budget books to us within the next couple of days, because we would like for the council members to have some time to review them and start to become familiar with the budget so that they can participate effectively starting on Monday. I would also mention that the budget hearings are going to be held in the Committee of the Whole and not in the Finance and Budget Committee. And this means that that all 11 members of council have made a commitment to fully participate in this process, and it's going to be integrated and all done as a single process, and so that should help us be more effective. We look forward to working with you. We believe that together we're going to be able to put forward an effective budget that provides for the essential services that the county provides, and also helps fund new initiatives that will help create jobs and improve the quality of life in Cuyahoga County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right, let's move on to item 10, consideration of an ordinance of council for first reading and referral to committee, item 0048.
Ordinance number 2011-0048, an ordinance requiring the county executive to contract for and conduct a disparity study in 2012, and, if required by law, to validate the disparity study every 5 years thereafter, and requiring annual updates of said study if required by law.
This matter will be referred to Public Works. I believe Mr. Jones wanted to be heard on this.
Thank you, Madam President, and my fellow colleagues, and to all present, I am pleased to introduce this legislation, which will require the county to conduct a disparity study beginning in 2012 and to ensure that the study remains timely and valid. This has been a goal of mine since coming into office. A disparity study is used to determine whether minority and female business enterprises are being fairly considered when contracts are awarded. As introduced this evening, the ordinance is very simple, but I trust that there will be good and thoughtful discussion in committee by this entire council and by the executive staff about this legislation. I believe we can use it as a stepping stone to make certain that all residents of the county are given a fair chance to participate in the county's employment, workforce, and business opportunities. While a disparity study usually focuses on minority and female businesses, I am particularly concerned about those residents who live in poverty and those who may have traditionally been left out of the running for all kinds of county opportunities. So I look forward to working with all on this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Miller.
may I have my name added as a co-sponsor, please?
All right, add Mr. Miller's name.
Additionally, Mr. Rogers has requested to be a sponsor as well.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item 11, consideration of a resolution for first reading, adoption, and suspension of rules, Rule 9D and 12A. Ms. Simon?
Madam President, I move we suspend the rules.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Simon, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it, the rules are suspended. Item 0290.
Resolution number 2011-0290, a resolution amending the 2011 annual appropriation measure by providing for additional fiscal appropriations from the general fund and other funding sources for appropriation transfers between budget accounts and for cash transfers between budgetary funds in order to meet the budgetary needs of various county departments, offices, and agencies, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
It's okay. Move to it.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shrine, seconded by Ms. Simon. Is there any discussion? And we had an opportunity to go over these items. All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Resolution is adopted. Item 12, consideration of resolutions for first reading and referral to committee.
Resolution number 2011-0291, a resolution adopting the 2012-2013 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Okay, this matter will be referred to the Finance Committee, which will be meeting as a committee of the whole.
Resolution number 2011-0292, a resolution authorizing the county executive to enter into a contract with Trans Systems Corporation of Ohio in the amount not to exceed $994,216 for consultant engineering services for rehabilitation of Columbus Road Lift Bridge over the Cuyahoga River in the city of Cleveland, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
This matter goes to Public Works.
Resolution number 2011-0293, a resolution establishing a list of certified providers for occupational skills training services for the individual training account system for the period July 1, 2011 through June 30, 2014, and authorizing the county executive to enter into agreements with said providers for said training services. For the providers as listed on the agenda is items 12C 1 through 37.
This is where we go to economic development. I just wanted to add, this is a two-step process. We have 37 various post-secondary institutions that will have to be certified by the county. And once they are certified, these programs will be available for training programs for various county recipients. So this is actually sort of a part of our economic development in terms of job training that's already in existence. So like I said, this will go to economic development, to Mr. Schran.
Resolution number 2011-0294, a resolution authorizing awards on requisition number 19758 to various providers in the total amount of $2,995,616 for Workforce Investment Act in-school and out-of-school youth training for the period September 1, 2011 through June 30, 2012, and authorizing the county executive to enter into contracts consistent with said awards for the providers and in the amounts as printed on the agenda, items D1 through 11.
And this will go to economic development.
Madam President, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just a question, when this goes to committee, items number 2 and 9 are to the same recipient in different amounts. If that could be brought up as a point of clarification when it goes to committee.
Okay, we'll take a look at it in committee.
If I may, Councilman Greenspan, my understanding is the one provider service would be for the in-school and the other would be for the out-of-school youth training program. And the resolution itself, the programs are differentiated and the dollar amounts for each of those.
Now we go to the newly added item E.
Reading into the record, resolution 2011-0295, a resolution amending the 2011 annual appropriation measure by providing for additional fiscal appropriations from the general fund and other funding sources for appropriation transfers between budget accounts and for cash transfers between budgetary funds in order to meet the budgetary needs of various county departments, offices, and agencies, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
We had discussions, the clerk and I had discussions about this, and because this is actually a finance issue, but it deals primarily with Health and Human Services, we're going to refer this to the Health and Human Services, and Mr. Miller has indicated he's willing to be a part of that committee at that time and go over these items. So Mr. Brady will be setting up a hearing on these matters within the next 2 weeks before, and then it has to be passed before the 25th of October. So it'll be in committee and back here on October the 25th. Item 13, committee report and consideration of rules of resolution for second reading under adoption, under suspension of the rules. Rule 90, Ms. Simon.
Madam President, I move we suspend the rules.
Second.
All right, moved by Ms. Simon, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The rules are suspended. Item 0257.
Resolution number 2011-0257, a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of self-supporting housing revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $5 million for Helen S. Brown Apartments for the purpose of rehabilitating, improving, and equipping a senior housing facility for low and moderate income seniors, authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement, bond purchase agreement, trust indenture, and tax regulatory agreement, authorizing and approving the use and distribution of a disclosure document, approving related matters, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, moved by Mr. Rogers and seconded by Mr. Miller. All right, any discussion on this? I think this came out of one of the Economic Development Committee. All right, no.
We talked about it the last
All right, all right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Item 0286.
Resolution number 2011-0286, a resolution amending the Board of County Commissioners Resolution number 101404 dated April 20th, 2010, which declared that public convenience and welfare requires resurfacing of Belvoir Boulevard from Fairmount Boulevard to Mayfield Road in the cities of South Euclid and University Heights by adding the city of Shaker Heights, finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's costs of said improvement, and authorizing the county executive to enter into agreements of cooperation with said municipalities in connection with said project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, moved by Ms. Simon, seconded by Mr. Rogers. Jones, sorry. Any discussion on this?
Madam Clerk, or President, I just want to be added to this.
Okay.
Sir.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Item 0287.
Resolution number 2011-0287, a resolution authorizing the county executive to enter into an agreement of cooperation with City of Cleveland for replacement of Cedar Road Bridge number 229.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jones and seconded by Mr. Miller. Is there any discussion on this one? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Item 0288.
Resolution number 2011-0288, a resolution authorizing the county executive to enter into an agreement with Cuyahoga County District Board of Health in the amount not to exceed $525,856.23 for administration of the wellness program for the period July 1, 2011 through June 30, 2012.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Who moved?
Brady.
All right. Moved by Mr. Brady and seconded by Mr. Rogers. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Item 0289.
Resolution number 2011-0289, a resolution authorizing the county executive to enter into an agreement with Cuyahoga County Department of Senior and Adult Services in the amount not to exceed $70,000 for direct care services for the Ryan White HIV/AIDS Treatment Modernization Act Part A program for the period March 1, 2011 through February 29, 2012, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt. Second.
Moved by Mr. Brady and seconded by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Item 14, committee report and consideration of an ordinance for second reading under suspension of the rules, Rule 9D. Ms. Simon?
President, I move that we suspend the rules.
Second.
I moved by Ms. Simon, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it, the rules are suspended. Item 0045.
Ordinance number 2011-0045, an ordinance establishing divisions and sections within the Department of Health and Human Services and declaring the necessity that this ordinance become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Sharon and seconded by Ms. Simon. This is the matter that we discussed in the work session, so if anyone in the public wants additional information, the work session is available online, and they can hear the complete explanation of the various changes in the Department of Health and Human Services that we heard from Mr. Werner about 2 hours ago. Any other discussion? Do you want to be heard on this, Mr. Brady?
No, I think we ought to give the administration the benefit of the doubt and let them reorganize the Health and Human Services Department.
And to, Madam President, the one comment that I had asked for during that session was the actual head count, and I was provided with that it went from 2,275 in 2010 to 2,199 down to 2,143, so it was going in the trend to which we were asking about during the work session.
That's referring to the number of employees, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam
Full-time
President.
employees. Yep.
Madam President.
Yes.
If I could just make a comment, not even, I appreciate what Councilman Brady and Sharon said, but I just wanted to also, on a related topic, give the council some notice about a similar piece of legislation that you're going to be seeing at your next council meeting, and that is, I think we're going to need to create a new department, which is not going to mean new employees. It's going to mean fewer employees, and that's in the area of communication. We have approximately about 20 public information officers that we inherited from the previous administration, which are spread out across all different departments. And as we've been going through and trying to identify people's seniority and what it's very difficult for us to reduce those numbers. And what you'll be getting shortly is a piece of legislation that creates a communications department that consolidates all those employees in one department under Nicole Daly-Jones, who's my communications director, and then that will be spun off as a separate department, and it will be dramatically reduced, and it will have a financial impact. So you'll see that, and I just wanted you to know that we're continuing to look for any consolidations we can find, but that's something you'll see in the next week or so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion on this matter?
Madam President, I would like to be added to as sponsor.
Add Ms. Simon's name?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And Germana?
Mr. Jimana? Anyone else? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Item 15, committee reports and consideration of an ordinance for third reading adoption. Item 0043.
Ordinance number 2011-0043, an ordinance providing for adoption of the Cuyahoga County Civil Service Pay Equity Plan and declaring the necessity that this ordinance become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rogers and seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, the ordinance is adopted. All right, under miscellaneous committee reports, I do have a committee report from regarding the Cuyahoga County Fairground. Last week, council member Mike Gallagher and I attended a meeting at the county fairgrounds with the County Agricultural Association. They are actually the people that run the fairgrounds. This meeting was organized by Mr. Gallagher and I. And at that meeting, we had an opportunity to address how the county could assist the fairground in securing and promoting more activities and events, including activities that would interest schools and some of our urban farming entrepreneurs. We also discussed ways in which the county and the board could share resources. And we have another meeting scheduled sometime in early February to discuss some of these items. Our meeting was very, very productive. I had invited the sheriff and the City of Cleveland Police Chief and the Safety Director to attend because of concerns I had about oversight of gun shows and other shows at the fairgrounds. While gun shows were one aspect of the meeting, we also had some very good discussion about using the fairgrounds in more creative ways. We actually give the fairground only about $3,300 a year, and the rest is operated on their own funds. So I want to thank Councilman Gallagher for bringing this idea to our attention. I hope that we will begin to use the fairgrounds for more activities and more events in the coming years, and make it a safe place for families and children, and make it more accessible to all the citizens of the county. So it's an ongoing process, and we actually appreciate any ideas from the public that they'd have regarding the fairgrounds. But it was a very productive meeting. So any other miscellaneous business? Or miscellaneous committee reports?
Madam
Brady?
Chairperson, this Thursday, the Health and Human Services Committee will be conducting a public hearing on the layoffs at Metro Hospital and the impact on the community. And we'd like to invite as many people on the council who are not on the committee but interested in this issue to be in attendance if possible.
All right, anyone else?
Madam President, Justice Affairs and Human Resource have rescheduled our committee meeting to October 21st rather than this Friday to discuss the domestic partner benefits.
President. The Public Works Contracting and Procurement Committee will meet Thursday at 11 to discuss the ordinances and resolutions referred today.
All right, any other miscellaneous business?
Madam President? Yes, I just wanted to announce, if you haven't seen the press release, that County Executive Fitzgerald has been spearheading and Director Steen a top dog contest, which I'm co-assisting with regard to raising awareness of the county kennel and the importance of obtaining dog licenses, and to let the public know that those licenses really fund the kennel in life-saving ways. So we're going to head up this contest, and the council members will all be invited to be judges for elementary school students who will be writing essays about why their dog or a neighbor's dog is the top dog. And it's also going to talk about and raise awareness of spay-neuter and the importance of that. So we'll be coming to you, or I'll be coming to my colleagues to set up some judging panels for that contest.
Obviously have the two top dogs in the county, so now are mine disqualified?
You're already disqualified, yes.
They're going to be crushed, but before we go on, I just want to make sure, because I always forget at the end of the meeting, that our next meeting will be October 25th, and I'm actually pulling a blank as to the subject of the work session for the October 25th.
I could not find anything specific except that the levy might be introduced for the 25th meeting, and that
Okay, so we may or may not have a work session on the 25th, but our regular meeting will be on the 25th of October. And I'd also like to call attention to our special meeting on November the 1st, where we'll be honoring various items about veterans from in Cuyahoga County. And we would encourage all veterans from whatever conflict to be in attendance, and that meeting will be chaired by retired Lieutenant Colonel Schran, who we've developed, we think, is a very interesting program, and we like to focus on the things that the county does for veterans. Okay. All right, any other public comment unrelated to the agenda?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Edward McCarthy or McCartney? I apologize.
All right, Mr. McCartney, if you'd like to come up, you have 3 minutes at the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Edward McCartney. I reside at, am I going to give the address? 3213 West 73rd, Cleveland, Ohio, 44102. I'd like to make a proposal, I make a proposal to amend the county charter to include an acknowledgement of God in the preamble. Although our present federal constitution does not have such an acknowledgement, our state constitution does, And I think at least one of the communities does. I'm not really sure. I think it might be North Olmsted acknowledges God in their preamble. I think that we could all use some divine guidance. I know that I need it, and I think that your council could use it to improve our government and our society, to the extent that you can. In Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6, in the King James Version, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." One of the things that moved me to make this proposal is, other than the fact that it's right to obey God, and we're all under God, whether people believe that or not. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, in the Authorized Version, it taught that the Israelites were going to be blessed by God if they obeyed his commandments, but they were going to be cursed by him if they disobeyed. And I think that we Americans could learn a lesson from that. Let's see. The word religion in both the federal and state constitutions, I take to mean, in a narrow sense, to mean Christianity. So that an establishment of religion in the federal constitution, I think, means a denomination of Christianity. For example, Article 1, Section 7 of our state constitution, it states that religion, morality, and knowledge are essential to good government. And the Supreme Court, while some of their decisions have been correct, I think has made some damage to our society by some of its decisions and led some people to believe that obedience to God's commandments is optional, and I don't think it is. I guess I got about a half minute left. In that amount of time, does anybody have any questions, comments, or disagreements before I take my seat? Okay, hearing none, I thank you for listening. I thank you for your service when you're right, and have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, is any other matters to come before this council? Any other public comment? Any other comments? No? All right, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Meeting stands adjourned.